Larry Bird was a 3-time NBA champion, 3-time MVP, and 12-time NBA All-Star. Truly, he cemented himself as one of the greatest players ever to play the game. But the path to stardom, as you know, is never easy. So how did Larry go from being someone who lost their dad young, being a college dropout, and growing up poor, to being one of the most amazing NBA stars we've ever seen? Well, this is the story of Larry Bird, and this is Basketball Dive. December 7th, 1956, in a small town in the state of Indiana, with a population of just 1,000, called West Baden Springs, Larry Bird was brought into this world. Larry's parents were of Irish, Scottish, and some Native American descent. His father, Claude Joseph Bird, aka Joe, was a veteran of the Korean War and had just returned home to Indiana a few years earlier. The Korean War had left a significant impact on Joe, and he struggled to find steady work upon his return. While in Korea, Joe had developed a taste for alcohol, which further complicated his life back home. This led to an unfortunately turbulent household for Larry and his 5 siblings as they experienced financial instability and family strife. As you're probably well aware, the 50s in the United States were a time of economic growth and prosperity, but not for everyone, of course. Many families, like the Birds, still struggled to make ends meet. They were among the poorest families in town, which was located in the poorest county in the state, Orange County. While Joe fought in Korea, he also learned to work hard and never stopped fighting for what he believed in. Most of the veterans that returned home from the Korean War were struggling to find stable employment, and Joe, unfortunately, was no exception. Nevertheless, after working as a wood finisher for 8 years, he was able to find a stable job at the Kimball Piano Factory in the nearby city of French Lick, Indiana. Despite the challenges, Joe managed to support his family and obviously passed on his resilience and determination to his children, particularly young Larry. Larry's mother, Georgia Marie Kearns, in turn worked 2 jobs in French Lick to support Larry and his 5 siblings, 4 brothers and a sister. They lived very poor in a small house with barely enough room for everyone. Georgia was employed mostly as a waitress. Waiting tables was a physically demanding job, but she was determined to provide for her family as best she could. The clientele, as you can imagine, were not always the most understanding or gracious, but in those times you had to persevere and keep going. When Georgia got the paycheck, she always put her kids' needs first. She made sure they had clothes, food, and of course, a roof over their head, even if that meant sacrificing her own needs and wants. Larry remembered later in an interview with Sports Illustrated, quote, "She worked 100 hours a week and made $100, and then went to the store and had to buy $120 worth of food. If there was a payment in the bank due and we needed to choose, she'd get the shoes, and then deal with them guys at the bank. I don't mean she wouldn't pay the bank, but the children always came first." End quote. Georgia's selflessness and love for her children were instrumental in shaping their character and values. She taught them the importance of hard work, sacrifice, and putting your family above all else. Growing up, Larry and his siblings obviously had to endure numerous hardships. As you see, money was always tight, and the family was constantly on the verge of financial ruin. Imagine that, the Birds rented 17 houses in 18 years until they finally bought a house to settle in on Washington Street. And even then, they couldn't afford much, and the living conditions were far from ideal. Yes, they had money for coal to keep the house warm, but many nights the old furnace would break down, leaving them shivering in the cold Indiana winter. Outside too, because the house would fill with black smoke. The family had to get out on the street and wait while Joe tried to fix the furnace, then wait some more for the smoke to clear from the house before they could finally step back in and get warm again. These incidents were a constant reminder to Larry and his siblings of their struggles and the importance of trying to persevere through them. Other kids would laugh at Larry and his siblings for the way that they dressed. Neighbor kids had basketballs or bikes, but Larry and his siblings had to share a basketball. A friend of Larry's would say, "If you can outrun me down to the post office, you can ride my bike for 10 minutes. Larry used to run his butt off just for those precious 10 minutes of bike riding joy. Things were so tough at times that Larry had to move in with his grandmother, Lizzie Kearns. He adored her and loved to stay at her place. With her, he found comfort and a sense of stability amidst the chaos of his own home. Larry felt peaceful and safe whenever he was with his grandmother. Seems like she provided for him the warmth that he was missing. In many ways, she served as a second mother to Larry, helping to shape the strong and resilient individual he would become in the future. But the living conditions were not perfect with his grandmother either. Grandma Kearns didn't even have a telephone back then. Imagine not having a telephone in your household today. At the time, it was still even considered a basic necessity. Communication with the outside world was limited, and this undoubtedly added to the isolation and difficulties faced by Larry and his family, and it eventually shaped Larry Bird's introverted personality as he grew up. The Bird family's financial issues were only exacerbated by Joe's alcoholism and struggles with his mental health. This led to frequent conflicts and a tense home environment. Larry's parents would often fight, including physically, and this greatly affected the emotional well-being of their children. Joe was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, as a result of his experiences in the Korean War, and his inability to cope with his trauma took a toll on the family. Larry's father was having violent nightmares, often waking up in a sweat, yelling, and thrashing around. The children would witness these episodes, adding to their fears and uncertainties they already faced in their daily lives. Their mother used to warn everybody in the family to never touch Joe in his sleep, otherwise he might wake up and unknowingly hurt them. Eventually, Larry's parents divorced when Larry was 16 years old. This left an even greater burden on Georgia to provide for her family, and Larry took on a more significant role in helping her. About a year after their divorce, though, a tragedy struck. Larry's father committed suicide, leaving the family devastated and forcing them to face even more adversity. Joe just couldn't take it anymore, and his death further reinforced the importance of perseverance and resilience in the face of hardships for Larry and his siblings. Larry was determined to rise above the tragic circumstances that surrounded his family. Yes, Larry was deeply affected by his father's death, as you can imagine, but he found solace and escape in the one thing that would eventually go on to define his life: basketball. Amidst the chaos of his home life and despite all of the turmoil, Larry's love for the game provided stability, purpose, and a sense of hope. Who would have thought? Because, actually Larry fell in love with all sports in general first. Growing up, Larry was always around outdoor sports like basketball, softball, and baseball, and his four brothers passed time by playing these games with him, and they all developed a strong competitive spirit. The pickup games in their backyard or local courts were intense and helped Larry develop his mental toughness and his drive to excel. Bird just loved to compete from a young age, and he tried to outwork everyone on the playground. He played whatever his brothers and friends were playing, but later, you guessed it, basketball became his favorite. Larry spent countless hours honing his skills playing for Springs Valley High School in French Lick, and soon became known as the Hick from French Lick due to his impressive talents. Larry's passion for basketball grew in high school, where he quickly made a name for himself. During games, he would often amaze the crowd with his exceptional skills and quick reflexes. He was taller than most kids, but he also had a natural talent for the game that set him apart from the rest of everyone else. Standing at 6'3" in his junior year of high school, Larry played mostly at the shooting guard position, but then when he grew up into an impressive 6'7" the next summer, he was able to move to the forward spot, and that's where his game truly began to flourish. His height advantage combined with his impressive shooting ability and passing skills made him a dominant force on the court. Larry had a brilliant shooting technique, and his shots were falling in from anywhere on the court. When he moved to the post, he started rebounding efficiently and developed an excellent court vision that allowed him to make precise passes to his teammates. His all-around game caught the attention of many who watched him play. He was the team's top scorer and rebounder, but he was also a leader in the locker room. He wouldn't talk much, but he did lead by example. By his senior year, Larry was averaging 31 points per game, 21 rebounds per game, and 4 assists per game, and became the school's all-time scoring leader. What an example to set, right? But as I mentioned, Larry wouldn't really talk much, so he wasn't much of a vocal leader as you might expect. As a person, he was, strange by all accounts. He was extremely introverted and often chose to keep to himself. As a youngster, Larry was intensely shy, and according to his high school coach Jim Jones, young Bird once flunked an English class because he didn't want to give a speech. He didn't like crowds. Who can blame him? Even at basketball games, both as a player and as a fan. When his older brother Mark was leading Springs Valley High School to a state sectional championship, Larry didn't even go to the games because he didn't want to be in the crowd. Their mother Georgia used to say that Larry was the only one of her 6 children whom even she often thought she couldn't tell what he was thinking. Larry only tells you exactly what he wants you to know, she once said. Despite his introverted nature, Larry's undeniable talent on the court was hard to ignore. He was ballin' as a teen already, and even if he hated crowds, he couldn't stop people from gathering to watch him play and filling up the stands. Fans from nearby cities would travel to watch Larry's games, eager to witness the young phenom in action. The Springs Valley High School gym would often be packed to capacity, with spectators jostling for a good view of the budding superstar. All eyes were on Larry as he effortlessly maneuvered across the court, leaving opponents in awe and his teammates inspired. And I mean, a small school gym packed with 1,600 fans was quite a sight to behold. The energy and excitement in the air were palpable, fueling Larry's competitive drive even more. Speaking of capacity, the Springs Valley Gym was able to accommodate over 4,000 spectators on Larry's final high school game. The crowd would spill over, with people standing along the sidelines and even outside the doors, just trying to catch a glimpse of the action inside. Interestingly enough, Larry's parents didn't attend many games, even though their house was just half a mile from the school gym. Their neighbors would offer them a ride to the games, knowing the Birds couldn't afford a car, but they often declined, respecting Larry's feelings. They knew Larry was kind of shy about having them there anyway. But one night, Larry's dad walked over to the gym at halftime to witness one of his son's special performances. As Larry told the Boston Globe in 2001, quote, "There was one night where I had a hell of a game going. I had 30-something points in the first half, and people were thinking I was going to break the Orange County record. My uncle was at the game and called my dad at halftime and said, 'You'd better get down here. Your boy is going to do it tonight.'" End quote. Larry Legend ended up with 54 points and an impressive 38 rebounds. In total at Springs Valley High School, Larry Bird scored 1,125 career points and made Indiana All-State honors in the process. His extraordinary performance in high school caught the attention of many college scouts, and many began courting him to their college programs. Bird was a tough target for recruiters though, partially due to his introverted nature and partially because of his loyalty to his hometown. Larry was not easily swayed by the glamour of prestigious college programs. One day, the head coach at Louisville, Denny Crum, came to town and challenged Bird to a game of horse. If Crum won, Bird would have to visit Louisville, about 60 miles away. If Bird won, Crum would leave without any further attempts to recruit him. The two battled it out shot for shot, but in the end, Larry emerged victorious, cementing his decision not to visit Louisville. Larry actually wanted to attend Kentucky and even visited Lexington, but the coaching staff showed little interest in him, leaving Bird disappointed and reconsidering his options. Rumor has it they didn't like how Larry behaved during the interviews. He didn't respond like they expected. He wouldn't listen. But that was just Larry being Larry, and they failed to see the immense talent he possessed beyond that. Everybody in French Lick, though, wanted Larry to attend Indiana University, and eventually Bird's high school numbers caught the eye of its head coach, Bobby Knight. The legendary coach extended an offer to Larry, and after much contemplation, he did decide to enroll at the Indiana University. Upon arriving at the Indiana campus in Bloomington, Indiana, Larry felt something was off right away. Bloomington was a fast-paced city compared to what Larry was used to, and compared to Larry's native French Lick, it was a huge culture shock, as you might imagine. People were just everywhere, and the campus was bustling with activity. This made Larry feel overwhelmed and out of place, as he was used to the quiet and close-knit community of French Lick. The change in environment was too much for him. Walking several miles just to get to class? No thank you. Seeing all of those 30,000 undergrads roaming around campus? Not for Larry. Additionally, they didn't find common language with Coach Bob Knight, who was known for his tough love coaching style. Larry struggled to adjust to the new environment and felt increasingly isolated. On campus, he found himself rooming with Jim Wisman, a 6'3" guard from Quincy, Illinois. Wisman was from a poor family as well. His father was a regular mail carrier, but nevertheless he had plenty of clothes in his closet, while Larry had none. He felt embarrassed by his lack of possessions and out of place among his more affluent peers. Larry's roommate generously offered to let him wear his clothes and even offered Larry to lend money from his own small allowance. Though Larry appreciated the gesture, he couldn't bring himself to accept the offer. He knew he needed to find a way to adapt to his new surroundings on his own terms. As a result, his insecurities and feelings of isolation continued to grow. Young Larry was just 18. He missed home and his grandma Kearns dearly. His homesickness, combined with the vast contrast in lifestyle and culture between French Lick and Bloomington, eventually became too much for Larry to handle. Just 24 days after arriving at Indiana, Larry decided to leave the campus and return to his hometown. It was a difficult decision, but he knew he needed to find a place where he could feel more comfortable and more focused on basketball. One day, he just packed, asked his roommate not to tell the coaches, and hitchhiked his way all the way back to French Lick. It was then left to one of Larry's uncles to inform Coach Knight of his nephew's departure, but there was very little they could actually do about it. Larry's mind was made up, and he was determined to find a path that suited him better. His family met him with mixed emotions. They were both relieved to have him back and simultaneously worried about his future. His uncles were even angry at Larry for leaving Bloomington. They wouldn't talk to him for some time. Larry knew he had let them down, but he also knew he needed to find a different way to achieve his dreams. It was a tough decision for sure, but Larry ultimately had to make the best decision for him. And anyway, he ended up back in his hometown, didn't really have any idea of his future, and he needed to find a job, and fast. He applied at a bunch of random city gigs, a bunch of part-time jobs, and he couldn't find anything until one day a guy he played basketball with told him about a job with a garbage truck company. Which, crazy enough, he took the offer. Maybe not so crazy since he wasn't able to find anything, but I mean, it's hard to picture an NBA legend picking up trash, but that's what happens. Humble beginnings. Supposedly, he had a blast. Bird would later say that, he was really happy doing that job. For real, the garbage truck gig was just one day a week, but Larry had so much fun. He says he was seriously having a blast tossing garbage bags around with his old buddy, Beezer Carnes. Quote, "I loved that job. It was outdoors. You were around your friends, picking up brush, cleaning up. I felt like I was really accomplishing something. How many times are you riding around your town and you say to yourself, why don't they fix that? Why don't they clean the streets up? And here, I had the chance to do that. I had the chance to make my community look better." End quote. Larry would ask Beezer to pick him up at the crack of dawn to go to work. When Beezer was late, Larry would walk there alone instead of waiting for his friend. Now that's work ethic. As Carnes later told Sports Illustrated, quote, "Larry would get on a tractor and mow the grass. We'd collect garbage, dig ditches, clean out the trucks, paint curbs. He loved it. If he hadn't done what he did as a basketball player, I'd say he'd be the French Lick street commissioner right now." End quote. You could tell Larry Bird was a hard worker, and he wasn't going to give up on his true dream either, which was, of course, playing basketball at a high level. Despite taking some time off from the game he loved, Larry stayed in shape, and for him it was a no-brainer to return to organized basketball. He briefly enrolled at Northwood Institute in nearby West Baden, but there was another, more attractive school recruiting him as well, and that was Indiana State University. The coaches at Indiana State had heard about Larry's talent and were eager to have him join their team. They even came over to French Lick to track Larry down and eventually found him coming out of a laundromat with a basket full of clothes for Grandma Kearns. It was at her house that they sat down with Larry and discussed the opportunity to play for them. After some thought and consideration, Larry decided to give college basketball another chance, this time at Indiana State University, which was still a smaller program at the time located in Terre Haute, Indiana, but a way better option for Larry, so he committed to it and enrolled in 1975. At ISU, Larry would finally find his footing again and began to shine. Under the guidance of Coach Bill Hodges, Bird quickly became their star player, putting up impressive numbers and leading the Indiana State Sycamores to an unprecedented level of success, eventually having a brilliant 3-year run with them. During this time with Indiana State, Bird propelled the Sycamores to a historic 33-0 record in the 1979 regular season. They reached the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history, and even went all the way to the final game. But here's a quick basketball history lesson for you. Do you know who they faced? Larry Bird and the Indiana State Sycamores were up against another powerhouse, the Michigan State Spartans, which, if you'll remember, were led by none other than Magic Johnson at the time. The legendary rivalry has begun. The game between Indiana State and Michigan State was a battle between two of the greatest players in college basketball history and two of the greatest who would ever play in general, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Weeks before the game, Bird had been named the National College Player of the Year, while Magic had to settle with a nomination for the award, but he managed to lead his team to a Big Ten championship in the process and eventually an NCAA championship berth. The game itself was a nail-biter. Both teams were evenly matched and neither could seem to get a definitive lead. But in the end, it was Magic Johnson and the Spartans who came out on top, winning the game a relatively close 75-64. Larry Bird scored 19 points, but he only made 7 of 21 shots, and it was a tough loss for him to swallow. Bird wasn't deterred though. His time at Indiana State had shown him that he did have the skills to play at the highest level, and he was determined to make it to the NBA, and the league before long was calling his name. Bird was drafted 6th overall by the Boston Celtics in the 1978 NBA draft, but he returned to Indiana State University for his senior year. Finally, after a successful college run, he finally entered the NBA for real in 1979. Larry Bird's arrival in the NBA was highly anticipated, and he quickly showed why. In his very first game with the Boston Celtics, Bird recorded a double-double, 14 points and 10 rebounds, and helped his team to a win over the Houston Rockets. Bird's rookie season was a fantastic one. He led the Celtics to a 61-21 record and made an immediate impact with his play. He averaged 21.3 points per game, 10.4 rebounds per game, and 4.5 assists per game, and was named the NBA Rookie of the Year. That award was important for Bird. It was his first major accomplishment, and it showed that he was one of the best in the game. But Bird wasn't satisfied. He wanted to win an NBA championship, and he knew that it would take a lot of hard work to achieve that goal. So Bird dedicated himself to improving his game and building chemistry with his teammates. He stayed after practice, working on his shooting and footwork, and spent countless hours studying game film. This dedication did not go unnoticed by his teammates and coaches, and it helped to create a winning culture within the team. In just his second season, Bird and the Celtics reached the NBA Finals, facing off against the Houston Rockets. The series was hard-fought, but in the end, the Celtics emerged victorious, winning the championship in 6 games. Bird played a significant role in the team's success, averaging 21.9 points per game, 14 rebounds per game, 6.1 assists per game, and 2.3 steals per game in the postseason, and 15.3 points, 15.3 rebounds, and 7 assists per game in the finals specifically. It was Bird's first ever title, and it was in just his second year in the league. Larry's excitement was contagious, and his teammates and fans could feel the energy and determination he brought to the game. The victory marked the beginning of a legendary career for Bird, as well as the reemergence of the Boston Celtics as an unstoppable force in the NBA. Now, this achievement was obviously even more important than the Rookie of the Year honors and helped Bird build his confidence. But with success came increased expectations and pressure. Bird knew he couldn't just rest on his laurels, and he continued to work hard, always striving to improve. At the 1982 All-Star Game, Bird put on an absolute show. He racked up 19 points, grabbed 12 boards, earning the All-Star Game MVP award. This performance only solidified his reputation as an elite player in the league. In the years that followed, Larry Bird cemented his place as one of the all-time greats of the sport. He continued to lead the Celtics to numerous playoff appearances and championship runs, earning himself countless individual accolades along the way. You be the judge. During his 13-year career, Bird was a 12-time NBA All-Star, 3-time MVP, and won 3 NBA championships with the Boston Celtics. He was also named to the All-NBA First Team 9 times, and the All-NBA Second Team once, and the NBA All-Defensive Second Team 3 times. One of the most impressive highlights of Larry's career is definitely the MVP three-peat he was able to achieve. Yes, you heard that right. Larry Bird won the coveted MVP award in 3 consecutive seasons, 84, 85, and 86, making him the 3rd player in NBA history to accomplish this, joining impressive NBA superstars like Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain in the process. Those were arguably the toughest seasons in Bird's career too, as the league was filled with fierce competition and exceptional talent. Rivals like Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Michael Jordan were all battling for supremacy, and Larry Bird's consistent excellence in those years truly speaks to his remarkable skill and determination. Another notable moment in Bird's career was his outstanding performance in the 1986 NBA Finals. He led the Celtics to a dominant victory over the highly regarded Houston Rockets. He recorded a triple-double in Game 6 with 27 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists, and Bird was deservedly named the Finals MVP, further solidifying his legend status. He's also considered one of the first players in the league to take advantage of the newly adopted three-point line. See, nobody was really shooting the long ball back in the day, especially the forwards, but Larry was an exception. He was a skilled shooter from anywhere on the court, and his shooting abilities revolutionized the game, and his confidence was through the roof too. At the inaugural three-point shootout during the '86 All-Star Weekend, Larry walks into the locker room and famously asks the other participants who's coming in second. He then goes on to win the contest, demonstrating his incredible shooting prowess and securing his reputation as one of the best three-point shooters of all time. Bird would go on to win the three-point shootout 2 more times in '87 and '88, another three-peat for him. Isn't that freaking legendary? Injuries started to take their toll on Bird as his career progressed, and the '88-'89 season is considered a lost season for Larry. He missed a significant number of games due to bone spurs in his heels, and it was clear that his body was starting to wear down. After a surgery, he was able to return for the '89-'90 season strong and determined to make an impact once again. Despite the challenges he faced with his health, Bird continued to perform at a high level, averaging 24.3 points per game, 9.5 rebounds per game, and 7.5 assists per game that season, his 11th in the league. Throughout the early 1990s, Bird remained a key player for the Celtics, but his body was not as cooperative as it once had been. He experienced recurring back issues, which ultimately led to his retirement in 1992. Nevertheless, Larry had done a lot to leave an indelible mark on the game, and his legendary status had always been cemented. Larry Bird's impact on the game of basketball goes beyond his numerous awards and accomplishments, though. He was a tireless worker, a fierce competitor, and a true leader on the court. His gritty, blue-collar style of play resonated with fans and helped revitalize the NBA during the 1980s. He really behaved like a regular person on the court, a simple worker who had to get a job done, who did his best to hustle and grind every single game. It's no wonder he became a beloved figure not only in Boston, but all around the world. You can call it something like mass adoption, as Bird's popularity transcended basketball and he became sort of a cultural icon. The masses ended up cheering for the hick from French Lick, the small-town boy who made it big on the world stage. He was just like them, an underdog who rose to prominence, but still remained a simple guy, grounded and humble, but also rough sometimes when needed. Also, Bird would never forget if you crossed him or tried to show him up on the court. He was known for holding grudges and using them as fuel to motivate himself and elevate his game. Oh, poor Kent Benson. Every time Larry played him in the NBA, he would humiliate the guy as payback for a college incident back at Indiana University when Benson and his teammates weren't so nice with the freshman Larry during his short stint there. Benson was a 6'10" center who was eventually drafted number 1 overall by the Milwaukee Bucks in 1977. He became an average player, sort of a role player in the league, but when facing Larry Bird, he'd often find himself on the receiving end of Bird's relentless competitiveness. It was a constant reminder of the unwritten rule of professional sports: don't get on the wrong side of a legend. At every opportunity, Larry Bird went out of his way to embarrass Benson, scoring on him with ease, blocking his shots, and orchestrating plays specifically designed to exploit his weaknesses. This culminated in Kevin McHale's 56-point game in '85 when Bird kept feeding McHale on the low post because Benson just couldn't handle him. There was no love lost between the two, and Bird's vendetta against Benson became a constant talking point whenever they faced off. And you know, in a video going over Larry Bird in full has to go over how great of a trash talker he was. He's probably one of the best to ever do it, honestly. Some of it was just bold. Like, if you were guarding him, he would straight up tell you he was gonna shoot in your face, and then he would do it. Great thing about Bird is he was never all talk. He could always walk the walk. And, you know, that just shows. Not only was he a great physical presence on the court, he was also a great mental presence as well. About Bird's rivalry with Magic Johnson, which started back in college, it kept going throughout their pro careers, and it was a huge deal for basketball fans all over the world. Their epic battles in the NBA Finals are still talked about today, and their individual greatness is just something else. The LA Lakers and the Boston Celtics were the top dogs in the league during that time, and their rivalry was all basketball fans could talk about. But Larry's legacy didn't stop in the NBA. In 1992, he was part of the original Dream Team, which is pretty awesome. The Dream Team was the first US Olympic squad to feature active pros from the NBA. It is still considered around the world as the greatest sports team ever assembled. Now, in the previous Olympics, the professional players were not allowed to participate. The teams were primarily made up of college players who were not always able to compete on the same level as the international competition. The US men's basketball team had suffered a surprising and embarrassing loss to the Soviet Union at the Olympic Games in Seoul in 1988, which led to the decision to allow NBA players to represent their country on the grandest stage. And boy, did they deliver. The Dream Team roster was a who's who of basketball legends, including Larry Bird, who played an essential role. Imagine, the roster featured Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, John Stockton, Karl Malone, Magic Johnson, Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, just to name a few. Bird got pretty good company in Barcelona, didn't he? He was coming off his 13th season in the league and had some back problems, so he wasn't at his best though during the Olympics. You would think Larry injured his back during the grueling NBA season or in a game, but the truth is he injured it while working on his mother's driveway back home in Indiana. He just loved his mom so much that he personally came over to shovel rocks and gravel, even as an NBA superstar. That just highlights his humility and dedication to his family. Despite not being at peak condition, Larry Legend still contributed big time and managed to make his mark. In a game against Germany, USA's third game, Bird stepped up and led the American team with 19 points. It was clear that Bird was still one of the best players in the world, and he helped lead the Dream Team to an easy gold medal victory. I'm telling you, the Dream Team was untouchable as they went on an absolute rampage throughout the tournament, beating every team they faced by an average of over 40 points per game. Larry may have been one of the older players on the team, but he proved he still had plenty of gas left in the tank, and he helped lead the Dream Team to one of their most memorable performances in Olympic history, all sports included. After the Olympics, though, it was time for Larry Bird to hang up his basketball shoes. He announced his retirement from the NBA in '92 due to injuries and health reasons, and his departure from the game was met with great sadness as fans and fellow players alike recognized the immense impact Bird had on the sport. Bird was done as a player, but you know that he would return in another capacity. He just needed to move forward. Make sure to keep watching and learn how Larry Bird was able to add up to his already impressive legacy in the NBA. For now, it was time for the hick from French Lick to focus on his family. Towards the end of his playing career, Larry Bird started spending more time with his longtime girlfriend, Dinah Mattingly. It was Larry's second serious attempt at a romantic relationship. Before Dinah, he was always shy, so it wasn't easy for him, and he always remembered how his first attempt back in 1975 didn't exactly work out. Back at Indiana State, while still being a freshman, Larry married his childhood sweetheart, Janet Condra. Their marriage was a big fail and unfortunately lasted less than a year. The couple attempted to reconcile, but it didn't work out. Regardless, Larry and Janet had one daughter, Corey, who was born in 1977. In the late 70s, society wasn't as open and accepting as it is today, making it difficult for Larry and Janet to navigate their relationship and the responsibilities that came with it. In addition, Bird seemingly wasn't ready to have a child and deal with the demands of parenthood while pursuing a basketball career. Bird had little contact with his daughter as he proceeded with his career and focused on basketball. Yes, he arranged for monthly checks to be drawn for Corey until she was 18, but he basically abandoned her and her mother. That's why he wanted to find a sense of family later on in life, and he wanted it to work this time. He wanted it to work with Dinah. Bird obviously felt the pressure of making things right in his personal life, learning from his past mistakes, and trying to be a better partner and father. Given his competitive nature, he had something to prove, and it's no surprise that he would commit to making improvements in his relationship as well. In 1989, Larry Bird and Dinah Mattingly finally married. They had a private ceremony at a friend's home outside Terre Haute, Indiana, with just 7 people present at the wedding, including the bride and groom, both of whom wore stonewashed jeans. How cute is that? Man, stonewashed jeans at the wedding, I mean, that's a true testament to their laid-back and down-to-earth approach to life. As for the kids, the Birds couldn't have biological children, so they had to make a decision to adopt. They welcomed their first child, a son named Connor, in 1992, and later adopted a daughter, Mariah, in 1994. The Bird family was finally complete, and Larry seemed to have found the balance between his professional and personal life he had been seeking. Unfortunately, Larry's adopted son Connor got some bad fame by being involved in legal troubles during his teenage years. He was first arrested for underage drinking and disorderly conduct back in 2011, and then had another incident, this time with Indiana University campus police in 2013, for allegedly trying to hit his girlfriend with a car and possession of illegal substances. Thankfully, following these incidents, Connor seems to have turned his life around. Since then, there have been no further reports of legal issues, and the Bird family has continued to maintain a low profile, staying out of the public eye. But what about Larry Bird's biological daughter, Corey? Did she stay abandoned and forgotten? Well, as time went by, she would want to talk to her dad, and she would attend his games, and they would meet. Larry would even walk her to the parking lot and hug her, telling her he loved her, but he was cold. He said he couldn't change the past, and he just wanted to move forward with Dinah and their kids, Connor and Mariah. See, it's just in Larry Bird's nature to always move forward, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. That's what he did with his family, and with his basketball legacy too. After retiring from the NBA, Bird couldn't stay away from the game for long. He made his triumphant return to basketball as a coach, demonstrating his ability to lead and teach others. First, the Celtics employed Larry Bird as a special assistant in the team's front office from '92 to '97. With his unique expertise and perspective on the game, Bird was able to contribute significantly to the team's strategy and player development. During his years with the Celtics front office, Bird honed his skills in evaluating talent, understanding team dynamics, and learning the ins and outs of managing a professional basketball team. This experience would serve him well in his next role as he made the leap from the front office to the sidelines. In '97, Bird's first head coaching gig came, and he was named the head coach of the Indiana Pacers, a role that seemed almost tailor-made for the Indiana native. In his first year as a head coach, he remarkably led them to a 58-24 record, Under Bird's leadership, the Pacers experienced something like a resurgence, becoming one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. He demonstrated a keen eye for talent, as well as an ability to connect with and motivate his players, showing that he truly had a natural aptitude for coaching. That season, the Pacers went deep into the playoffs too, notably pushing the Chicago Bulls to 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. Consequently, Bird was named NBA Coach of the Year for his tremendous efforts. He continued to coach the Pacers for 3 seasons, consistently improving the team each year, ultimately leading them to consecutive Central Division titles in '99 and 2000, and even making it to the NBA Finals in 2000. Interestingly, Larry had stated he only wanted to be a coach for 3 years. True to his word, he kept his promise and went on to become a basketball executive. And this then raises the question, how good was Larry at being a basketball executive? After leaving the Pacers in 2000, Bird took a brief hiatus from coaching, but he needed to move forward. Remember, that's his thing. And he returned to the Pacers as president of basketball operations in 2003. He quickly rebuilt the team through the draft and trades, and under his leadership, the Pacers became one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. Larry's approach to team building was simple, yet effective. He focused on acquiring hard-working players who played team ball and had a strong work ethic. He believed in creating a culture of winning and instilling the right values in his players. Playing in small market Indiana, Bird hasn't had the luxury of an open checkbook to chase max salary players in a max salary league. He's had to worry far more about fit, chemistry, and that was just fine with him. As Bird said in an interview with Yahoo Sports, quote, "I knew it was going to be tough. We don't drive revenues like the big market teams. We can't go after $17 million players. We've got to go a different way, and we've got to do it one piece at a time." End quote. It worked like a charm. Bird drafted superstars like Danny Granger, Paul George, who would later become All-Stars, and made trades to bring in key players to the team. The Pacers consistently made the playoffs and were a formidable force in the Eastern Conference for many years during Bird's tenure. Small market or not, Larry was able to make smart moves and build a competitive team, proving that it's just not always about spending big bucks, but also about finding the right players with the right attitude and right work ethic. In 2012, his efforts as an executive were recognized as he was named NBA Executive of the Year for his role in rebuilding the Pacers. Can you believe it? The country boy from rural Indiana became the first and only man in NBA history to win the NBA MVP, Coach of the Year, and Executive of the Year awards. And oh yeah, he also won Rookie of the Year, All-Star MVP, and Finals MVP a couple of times like we said. Unbirdleavable. Larry Bird stepped down from the Indiana Pacers president of basketball operations position in 2017, but he stayed with the team in an advisory capacity. Bird continued to serve as an advisor until 2022, when he finally stepped back from maintaining an active role with the Indiana Pacers. What a ride it has been for Bird, a true Hall of Famer. He has been inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame 2 times now, first as an individual in '98, and then as a member of the Dream Team in 2010. Larry Bird was also inducted into the College Basketball Hall of Fame, the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame, but most importantly, I think you can agree too, Larry Bird is people's favorite basketball legend. He was a one-of-a-kind player, but he was also a humble guy who didn't like to brag or celebrate his accomplishments too much. Bird was always a team player, whether he was leading the Boston Celtics or coaching the Indiana Pacers. Yes, he talked trash, but it was never malicious or over the top. Instead, it was a way to fuel his competitive spirit and push his opponents, as well as himself, to perform their best. Overall, Bird is just a nice person, from starring in movies like Space Jam alongside Michael Jordan, Bill Murray, and Bugs Bunny, to appearing in video games and commercials. Did you know the Converse commercial from the 80s where Larry Bird appears with his rival Magic Johnson? Classic. Magic Johnson was the charismatic counterpart to Bird's more well-reserved and competitive demeanor. The two of them not only had a fierce rivalry on the court, but they also shared a mutual respect for each other and admired each other's talent and accomplishments. The dynamic duo's rivalry was not just about outdoing each other, but also about pushing the boundaries of the game and elevating it to new heights. As they starred in the commercial, they showcased their unique personalities and playing styles, illustrating the stark contrast between them while also highlighting their undeniable chemistry and friendship on and off the court. How about a more recent one? This one's a McDonald's commercial where Bird stars with Dwight Howard and LeBron James. The 2 different basketball eras present in the commercial serve as a reminder of how much the game has evolved and how much Bird impacted the sport and how much it continues to be felt today. Sure, the styles of play may have changed, but Larry's impact on the game and his legacy as a competitor, leader, and team player remain timeless. Heck, he even impacted the modern social media culture. Did you know that Twitter's logo, well, old logo now, is named Larry in honor of Larry Bird? I'm telling you, Larry has done it all and truly became a beloved basketball icon on and off the court. He's the guy who signs autographs until his hand cramps up, or takes photos with everyone who asks, gives out high fives to everyone who asks, and fist bumps all the kids. He and his wife Dinah do like privacy though, and he likes privacy with his kids of course, but when it comes to basketball fans, Larry Bird is always willing to lend a hand. It's just part of his nature to be helpful, kind, and approachable. And it's why, even though he retired from basketball many years ago now, people still talk about him with reverence and admiration. They still discuss Larry on TV shows, podcasts, and in basketball forums, analyzing his legendary career and the impact he had on the sport. They debate his ranking among the all-time greats, marvel at his incredible achievements, and reminisce about the unforgettable moments he created on the court. Larry Bird's story transcends basketball. It's a tale of determination, humility, and relentless hard work. It serves as an inspiration to aspiring athletes and fans alike, proving that with talent, dedication, and the right attitude, anyone can achieve greatness, even if you're from a small town in the middle of nowhere. So, Larry Bird has been a huge inspiration to basketball fans from all different generations, and that's well warranted. His legacy is this amazing story of never giving up, and you can always move beyond your humble roots. Larry Legend inspired lots of people to be their true selves, never to give up on their dreams, and to always move forward. And hey, if you're into this video, we did another video on Larry Bird's family that'll give you all the juicy details about all of the amazing people in Larry's life over the years. Hope you click on that, and if you've already checked that out, check out these recommendations from YouTube for our channel right here.